Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavala Bhagirivaradari Gopi Janavala Bhagirivaradari Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajapacharya Ashtottara Shatashisha Madhusvangasi Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Kantaraj srimadbhagavatam Ki Jai. All glories to the simple devotees. All glories to the simple devotees. All glories to the simple devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So this morning we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, entitled Creation of the Fourth Order, Chapter 9, Dhruva Maharaj returns home, text 29, and we'll finish the purport today. Well, I think 30 is on the board. Oh, you thought it was 30? No, he didn't. He didn't finish. Okay. Maitreya Vacha. The great sage Maitreya replied. What are you saying? The whole thing? Oh, okay. Okay. Matu Sapatnya Vagbanar Shridividas Tutan Smaran Naichan Muktipatir Muktim Tasmat Tapam Upayavan. Okay, word by word translation, right? Okay, read the translation. Okay. Translation. It's 4:9:29. Maitreya answered, Dhruva Maharaj's heart, which was pierced by the arrows of the harsh words of his stepmother, was greatly grieved, and thus when he fixed upon his goal of life, he did not forget her misbehavior. He did not demand actual liberation from this material world, but at the end of his devotional service, when the Supreme Personality of Godhead appeared before him, he was simply ashamed of the material demands he had in his mind. Okay, so we'll continue the purport. I don't know. Anyways, I'm not sure who those who want to follow on their devices, but we read a few paragraphs. So the paragraph that we're starting now starts with therefore. Therefore, Vaishnava philosophers do not accept Sayuja Mukti to be within the category of Mukti, or liberation. According to them, Mukti means transferal to the loving service of the Lord from one's position of serving Maya. Lord Chaitanya also says in this connection that the constitutional position of a living entity is to render service to the Lord. That is real Mukti. When one is situated in his original position, giving up artificial positions, he is called Mukta, or liberated. In the Bhagavad Gita, this is confirmed. Anyone who engages in rendering transcendental loving service to the Lord is considered to be a Mukta, or Brahmabhuta. It is said in Bhagavad Gita that a devotee is considered to be on the Brahmabhuta platform when he has no material contamination. In the Padma Purana, this is also confirmed. Mukti means engagement in the service of the Lord. The great sage Maitreya explained that Dhruva Maharaj did not desire in the beginning to engage in the service of the Lord, but he wanted an exalted position better than his great-grandfathers. This is more or less not service to the Lord, but service to the senses. Even if one gets the position of Brahma, the most exalted position in this material world, he is a conditioned soul. Srila Prabodhananda Saraswati says that if one is elevated to real, pure devotional service, he considers even great demigods like Brahma and Indra to be on an equal level with an insignificant insect. The reason is that an insignificant insect has a desire for sense gratification, and even a great personality like Lord Brahma also wants to dominate this material nature. Sense gratification means domination of material nature. The whole competition between conditioned souls is based upon domination of this material nature. Modern scientists are proud of their knowledge because they are discovering new methods to dominate the laws of material nature. They think that this is the advancement of human civilization. The more they can dominate the material laws, the more advanced they think they are. Dhruva Maharaj's propensity in the beginning was like that. He wanted to dominate this material world in a greater position than Lord Brahma. Therefore, elsewhere it is described that after the appearance of the Lord, when Dhruva Maharaj thought and compared his determination to his final reward, he realized that he wanted a few particles of broken glass, but instead had received many diamonds. As soon as he saw the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face, he immediately became conscious of the unimportance of his demand from the Lord to have an exalted position better than Lord Brahma's. When Dhruva Maharaj became situated on the Vasudeva platform due to seeing the Lord face to face, all his material contamination. Do you think you could fill this thing up? Please. All his material contamination was cleared. Thus he became ashamed of what his demands were and what he had achieved. He was very much ashamed to think that although he had gone to Madhuvan, giving up the kingdom of his father, and he had gotten a spiritual master like Narada Muni, he was still thinking of revenge against his stepmother and wanted to occupy an exalted post within this material world. These were the causes for his moroseness even after he received all the desired benedictions from the Lord. Thank you, Hare Krishna. When Dhruva Maharaj factually saw the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there was no question of a revengeful attitude towards his stepmother, nor any aspiration to lord it over the material world. But the Supreme Personality is so kind that he knew that Dhruva Maharaj wanted these. Speaking before Dhruva Maharaj, he used the word Vedaham, because when Dhruva Maharaj demanded material benefits, the Lord was present within his heart, and so he knew everything. And so knew everything. The Lord always knows everything a man is thinking. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita also, Vedaham samatitani. The Lord fulfilled all Dhruva Maharaj's desires. His revengeful attitude towards his stepmother and stepbrother were satisfied. His desire for a more exalted position than that of his great-grandfather, who was also fulfilled, At the same time, his eternal position in Dhruva Loka was fixed. Although Dhruva Maharaj's achievement of eternal planet was not conceived of by him, Krishna thought, what will Dhruva do with an exalted position within this material world? Therefore he gave Dhruva the opportunity to rule this material world for 36,000 years with unchangeable senses and the chance to perform many great sacrifices, and thus become the most reputed king within this material world. And after finishing with all this material enjoyment, Dhruva Maharaj would be promoted to the spiritual world, which includes the Dhruva Loka. Om Jnanatipadandasya Garanjana Shalakaya Chakshuvan Maditam Nena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukham Karidavachalam Pangam Nangayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Vande Shri Gurun Diditananam Vansha Kapuri Vishta Kripasan Bevacha Paditanam Pavane Guru Vaishnave Bhagawatsaptaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinda Hare Krishna. So I'll read the translation again. Maitreya answered, Dhruva Maharaj's heart, which was pierced by the errors of the harsh words of his stepmother, was greatly aggrieved, and thus when he fixed upon his goal of life, he did not forget her misbehavior. He did not demand actual liberation from this material world, but at the end of his devotional service, when the Supreme Personality of Godhead appeared before him, he was simply ashamed of the material demands he had in his mind. So there's one verse from, I think, Madhavendra Puri, and it's a verse within, you could say, that relates to the present verse we're reading in the purport. And it's Kama Dinam Katidna Katida Paldita Dornideshas Tesham Jata Maina Kura no Trupa no Pashanti Utsre Jaitan Atiyatapate Sampritam Labdi Buddhis Twamayata Sharanamabhayam Mamyuk Shvatmidasya. So that, in essence, is saying, Madhavendra Puri is saying, I have engaged in the service of my senses, in the service of lust, selfishness, anger, greed. In so many ways, these the senses and the bad qualities have. What's the actual translation? Maybe did you? Yeah.
How many ways have I sought to obey the seductive demands of my wicked desires? They show me no mercy, yet I have gone shamelessly trying to quench lust unquenchable fire. But now I'm rejecting these hellish desires, so my higher intelligence now has awoken. O Krishna, O shelter of fearlessness, please let me take you to the way of my people.
Zach, do you think you could get the mic so he could say that again, please? It's just right here, the mic. Or Dharmaraj. Yeah.
I couldn't get the adi. Kama adina means lust, anger, greed, illusion. So I just put the lust. In how many ways have I sought to obey the seductive demands of my wicked desires? They've shown me no mercy, yet on I have gone shamelessly trying to quench lust's unquenchable fires. But now I'm rejecting these hellish desires, for my higher intelligence now has awoken. O Krishna, O shelter of fearlessness, please let me serve you with faith that will never be broken.
Jai. See, that's an important verse. For somebody to come to that platform where they say, okay, no longer am I serving these material desires, but I'm just going to act according to the order of Krishna. So that's very important, that we come to that platform. And it's not that we're just serving our senses or serving those material desires, but we're following other people. Because after all, that's our tendency, to follow people. In other words, to do what they do, or to follow their instructions or their lead. So the Bhagavatam says that, in other places, says that materialistic people, they're like, it's like the blind leading the blind. So in other words, the blind leading the blind, you end up in a ditch. So in other words, an ignorant person leading the ignorant person. So all the Prabhupada would say all the so-called, and I'm saying now, all the so-called leaders of modern society are actually not leaders. They are cheaters. Or Prabhupada would say they're fools or rascals, so many things. And that they don't actually have real knowledge, and they can't lead people to real happiness. So therefore they're cheaters. And ourselves and other people who follow such people, they also, if we follow a cheater, then we get cheated. That makes sense, right? Logic and reason. Follow a cheater, we get cheated. So the idea is to give up following all of these blind men and women, ignorant people, and also give up serving our material desires, and to accept the guidance of Krishna, accept the guidance of the srimadbhagavatam, of the Bhagavad Gita, of the devotees who quote those books, to accept that guidance. And in this way we could actually attain mukti, which means to be situated, from a Vaishnava perspective, it means to be situated in our original transcendental position as servants of Krishna, loving, ecstatic servants of Krishna. And in order to get to that stage, because it's actually not, you could say, it's not super common to get to that stage of to return to that stage. It's rare. So to get to that stage, the idea is that we have to make that our main desire, and you could say we have to make that our most powerful desire, and that the desire to be Krishna conscious. And that desire to become Krishna conscious, or to find Krishna, or to re-establish a relationship with Krishna, that has to move, or that has to fuel all of our activities. Because in this world, after all, our desires, just like gasoline fuels a car, right? You put your foot on the pedal, it moves because there's gas in it. So it's fueling the car. So after all, within this world, it is only desires that are fueling people or moving people to act in certain ways and move towards a particular goal. So if we make our desire to be Krishna conscious our main desire, or the most powerful desire we have, then naturally that will fuel all of our activities, that will inspire all of our activities in life. And if we are Krishna conscious, then that will also inspire all of our activities. So what I'm saying is that sometimes people who are striving to be Krishna conscious, or who are Krishna conscious to some degree, sometimes they're acting under the direction of Krishna, they're being fueled by Krishna, they're being inspired by Krishna, and sometimes they're being inspired otherwise, namely by the material energy, by these, whatever it's, selfishness or greed or anger and all these different things. So the idea is that we want to get to the point where all of our activities at every single moment are completely inspired by our desire and by Krishna, by our activities moving towards that goal. So that's important. And people throughout the world, I mean everybody, they are searching. They are searching for. They're searching for bliss, or they're searching for Ananda. And that could translate into many things. I mean, Dhruva Maharaj had a desire to be greater than his father and his grandfather, his great-grandfather, by having a position in this material world, a very big position in this world. And people, in so many ways, they translate this desire for happiness, in so many different ways. And when we actually look at it, we see that, like, I was driving, and, you know, sometimes you see these guys and they're holding signs, right? They say, I want some money, or like one guy had a sign downtown, I remember it said something like, why lie, you know, I want pot, you know, like, I think it said, why lie, I want, and it had a money sign. Yeah, why lie, I want to get high, right? Why lie, and it said, I want, and it had the money sign, money for pot, you know, for marijuana, for ganja. So maybe people thought that was honest, and wow, he's really honest, and amusing. All right, we'll give this guy a few bucks. And I can understand what it means to want to get high, so here, I'll help you out, buddy. So they have different signs. And one guy here, down before you get on the freeway, he holds a sign, and it said, please help, I'm just hungry. Now, of course, any... like, hey, are you... Yeah. So any, you could say, good-natured or soft-hearted person, yeah, I mean, feel some compassion. I mean, you feel some sympathy. Okay, man, poor guy's a little hungry, right? I mean, Mukunda Trina was getting all into these different things yesterday, so I won't. That was covered. But the question is, okay, is he telling the truth? Is he really telling the truth? And, you know, I thought about it, and the guy, I mean, at least from the looks of him, he looks like... No, not well-fed, but he looks like he has enough intelligence to understand that anybody within the SanDiego County with very little qualification could go to the local welfare office, as they used to call it. I don't know if they call that anymore. Maybe they call it public human resource or whatever. They could go to the local office and say, my name is so-and-so, and please give me an EBT card, which gives you like $250 a month. I mean, that's a lot. I mean, it's just one guy. And what to speak of the other 50 churches around SanDiego that feeds people almost every day, or maybe every day. So I was thinking to myself, this guy really hungry. And I was thinking to myself, he's probably hungry, but, you know, he's hungry for something else, you know, maybe money or maybe drugs, because, you know, you can't really buy drugs with the EBT card. Maybe you could. I guess you could make a trade, whatever. But so that the fact is that people they say, okay, I desire Krishna, or I'm hungry for Krishna, right? And maybe on some level they are. But they have to be, the idea is that we have to be really, really hungry or desirous for Krishna in order for Krishna to manifest, in order for us to be connected with him. Because that's, yeah. Like there was this one bhakta we had here, and whatever, he's a nice guy, and I'm not like, yeah. But the bhakta, he'd be chanting japa, and then he would go outside the temple room, and he'd start wandering around and everything. And then he had this bright idea that, hey, you know what? I'm going to wander the streets here, and I'm going to go on a search. And, yeah. He would go on a search. He explained to one devotee, I think he explained to Dayanidhi, but he said, I'm going on a search because, you know, all these drunk guys are out, you know, Friday, Saturday night. You know, they drop, you know, $20 bills or this or that, you know. They drop stuff, valuable stuff. And actually Dayanidhi said, he was telling me, he said, I used to live up there, and it's true, because he used to walk, because his apartment was here, and he would walk through this area, you know, past Garnett, and yeah, sometimes, you know, $20 or whatever. So this bhakti, he would go out and he would search during japa time, you know, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, looking. So, I don't know, I mean, maybe Krishna reciprocates with him. Oh, hey, there's $20, you know. But you could say, okay, was he really looking for Krishna? He was chanting, right? Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, looking. He wasn't really looking for Krishna. He was looking for something else, you know. Lakshmi, Srimati Lakshmi. he was looking for money, or he's looking for a phone, or looking for whatever, some watch or something. People drop all type of stuff. So the idea is that we get what we pay for. We get what we pay for. In other words, Krishna reciprocates perfectly with everybody. Yayatamam prapadyante tamstadaiva bhajamiham. As they surrender to me, I reward them accordingly. So he reciprocates perfectly with us. So if we want Krishna, right, to a 5% degree, then all right, Krishna's okay. Here, you get me 5%, and so on. So that's you could say, that's the beauty, or that's the wonder, or that's the amazing. That's the amazing thing about associating with devotees, is that if we associate with devotees, gradually all of our other desires, which are not very important, actually not important at all, other materialistic desires, will gradually be chipped away at and completely removed from our consciousness, where our only desire is to have this loving relationship with Krishna, to be Krishna conscious. And actually that's what one of our acharyas says, that's the price, because like I was saying, we get what we pay for. And the price for Krishna consciousness is the greed, or the lalyam to attain it, the greed, the lobha. And I heard my spiritual master, he was given this example that, I forgot where he got it from, but he's given this example that you're in India, examples in India. So you're in India and there's so many sweet shops there. So there's rasgullas and there's sandesh, all these Bengali sweets and all these nice sweets. And then you see these sweets and then you think, oh really, I really like to have some of those, but I don't have any money. So anyways, that's all right, I'll just move on. So he's saying that that's not really greed. It's difficult to attain, or at least because you don't have any money, so just forget about it. But he said greed is that whatever the case is, you beg, you borrow, you steal, somehow or other you make arrangements to get those sweets. So similarly, we could come up with so many excuses why we're not getting closer to the goal of Krishna consciousness. So many reasons why we're not becoming Krishna conscious. But the only reason, practically speaking, is that we need to develop our greed more to have it. That you could say, oh well, it's too difficult, or I don't have the enthusiasm to attain Krishna consciousness, or whatever. I got a bad husband, or I got a bad wife, or my mind's out of control. Okay, there may be so many apparent reasons, but if we develop that greed, that no, somehow or other, even though there's so many impediments, apparent impediments, somehow or other I have to attain it. I have to attain Krishna consciousness. I have to attain that goal. So that's what we need to develop this desire. And Prabhupada wrote that in one letter to a disciple. He said, you're writing to me saying that you have so many impediments, so many obstacles, but actually there are no obstacles. With one kick of my I think Prabhupada said boot. Prabhupada sometimes say boot. With one kick of my boot, I can knock all these obstacles away. Interesting, Prabhupada used boot because technically Prabhupada didn't. With one kick of my boot, I could kick all these obstacles away. And then Prabhupada said, provided you follow my guidance, my instructions. So if we follow the instructions, we could attain that goal. And here, Prabodhananda Saraswati, it's Prabhupada mentioned the purport that that he says that if one is elevated to real pure devotional service, he considers even great demigods like Brahma and Indra to be on the equal level with an insignificant ant. So in other words, he's not he respects the demigods, but within Vedic culture there's almost an obsession with the demigods in the sense of worshiping the demigods for material reasons. So that just is completely kicked out. And also this idea of heavenly planets means higher planets. There are many people, I mean, not so much nowadays, but probably still, that consider this idea of heavenly planets, I have to go there and I'm going to enjoy this and that. I mean, interesting enough, there was one brahmachari, I think it was in Mayapur or somewhere in India somewhere, and he was a brahmachari for many years, and they asked him, why are you doing all this? Bhaktivedanta Purna Swami said, why are you doing all this? Why are you being a brahmachari for so many years, engaged in Krishna consciousness? He was very strict and everything, and he said, and he was serious too. He said, you know what? I want to get out of this material world, and I want to go to one of the heavenly planets, so I could enjoy there. I don't know if he said what, but so they're not concerned with that, and practically whatever else you could say, impediments, whatever else difficulties that people may find within their lives in Krishna consciousness. For example, the senses. Prabhu Saraswati says the venomous senses, like a snake, they could bite you. The fangs are removed, or the venom is removed. So in other words, all of the material desires that are ordinarily in people's minds, the devotee who gets a sidelong glance of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because that's what the verse says, sidelong glance of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, all of this is, it doesn't conquer the devotee. So that's nice. Empowered by the sidelong glance. Because everybody gets a sidelong glance, right? I guess on some level everybody does. Empowered by it. So, interesting enough is that Dhruva Maharaj, what he desired in his past life, in his younger days, he came to the conclusion that I don't want these. Still, Krishna gave them to him. So sometime within the Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's an interesting section. I'm not exactly sure what it is. I'm forgetting, but there's a section in which it says that Krishna fulfills the material desires of his devotees sometimes in such a way that the devotee never wants them again. So, I mean, you can imagine Dhruva Maharaj, the material desires he had to get this big position and as a big ruler and king in the big kingdom, and revenge for his stepmother, and all these different desires he had. You could imagine he was feeling so ashamed of himself. So definitely he was thinking in his mind, and he acted on that. Krishna fulfilled him in such a way that he never would want them again. That's a fact. But interesting enough, Krishna decided to do that. Still fulfill the desires. And he fulfilled the desires in such a way, it says here in the purport, it says, Krishna thought, what will Dhruva do with an exalted position within this material world? And he said, I'm going to give him Dhruva Loka. So he really laid it on. 36,000 years reigning as the king. And after finishing all of these, you could say, material desires, which, again, he was ashamed that Krishna fulfilled them, he was promoted to the spiritual world. And as quoted many times by Prabhupada, this idea of the verse where it says that Dhruva says, I was searching for broken glass, but I found you as like a jewel. Just like this bhakta, he was out here searching for broken glass, just insignificant things of this world. while he had the jewel right in his hand, the japa beads and the holy name. So we want to be like Dhruva Maharaj, at least to some degree. Of course, no one, it's challenging to be like Dhruva Maharaj, but we could try to be like Dhruva Maharaj in terms of following him and accepting his instructions and guidance by his example. So does anyone have any questions? Yes.
On your last talk, and I heard the quote, I'm losing my voice right. That Krishna fulfills our desires sometimes, so that we never want to be. How exactly does that work? Is it that we get them and then we feel embarrassed, like you would ask for them? Is it we get them and we fulfill them and we reach saturation point? I mean, how does that work? Or what are some examples of how it might work? Now that I'm done answering.
Some examples. How does that work? Well, I mean, there's never really a point where it's like satiated. Oh, I'm completely satisfied and happy, and I'm completely in content now with my material desires. Because the nature of material desires is there's always an element there of frustration and dissatisfaction because it's not connected with Krishna. It's material desire. So there's the real ananda or the real bliss is not there. It's like a shadow, a very bleak, like insignificant shadow of the real thing. So just like there's this quote that somewhere in the Vedic literature, I have read it though. It says that even if a man gets all the women in the world, all the wealth in the world, and all the grains in the world, still they won't be satisfied.
You say grains or
grains? Grains, yeah. Food, all the food, and still they won't be satisfied. So the nature of material desire, it's not really satisfied, but Krishna fulfills it in such a way as where, yes, the devotee is ashamed, but there's a mix-up of misery there. So, and by that misery, there's some happiness with the material desire, and there's also a lot of misery. And by that misery, they think, oh, I'm never going to do that. This is just. And there's that quote. I mean, there's that verse from the srimadbhagavatam. It says that when I really favor somebody, then I take everything away. And their family, their money, this and that, and yeah, and they suffer again and again, as it says, in essence. So then someone will say, "Oh, how is that Krishna's mercy?" I mean, Tirtha Maharaj tells us. He said that there's one devotee or person, and Tirtha Maharaj was quoting this to him, and he said he was an Indian person, and then he said. The Indian man, he said, "Oh, this is we can't let people see this. This is very, dangerous. People get scared away." And so, like in the example of Prabhupada, of course, he's coming from the spiritual world, coming to deliver and save and free us in the world. But his family life, because he tried for so many years to involve his wife and his children in Krishna consciousness, but it just wasn't working. They were really not cooperating with him. And time came, and he was older. He was around 50. So then it just wasn't working. So he just left, and he felt that Krishna just completely he took everything away. His family, and nobody really cared for him. There's this whole song. There's a poetry that Srila Prabhupada wrote in Vrindavan when he went there after he left his family. That what's this family life? Just a list of names, and nobody cares for me now that I don't have money. On and on and on like this. And now I'm taking full shelter of you. So when Krishna, you could say, fulfills desires of people, material desires, then it happens in such a way whereas over time it doesn't really work out. and they're forced to take more and more shelter of Krishna and complete shelter of Krishna. So that's I don't know if you want to say this.
Hare Krishna. The verse by Madhavendra Puri
Yes.
illustrates that. The thing is, it's a dangerous road to take, because it seems like if you go down the road of indulgence and trying to be Krishna conscious, you risk forgetting all about Krishna consciousness, making a fence. You make a fence, then you're in trouble. Krishna, I mean, you're really in trouble, because Krishna doesn't. You take away your taste for Krishna consciousness. The Madhavendra Puri verse illustrates someone who still wants to be a devotee, but he's being burdened and ordered around by his lusty desires, and finally he just says, he has his prayer, please, I'm kicking him out now, like that. But the fact is that if you play footsie with Maya, it grabs your foot, and you can't be at ease in the association of devotees, and you risk offending, and then there's a long postponement. You know what I'm saying? But if you're still,
you're not at
well,
ease with the company of the
well, yeah. I mean, especially if you've offended devotees. I mean, I remember there's one. I won't mention any name. This is way back when I was in LA in the 70s. And this devotee he'd had problem with controlling his sex desire and everything. And he came before, I saw him, I was standing right behind him. He came before the deities. He couldn't even look at Rukmini Dwarkadish. He was standing there in front of the deities, left to right, because he felt so ashamed, And then he got into other things, and he just went off. We didn't see him anymore. So that's but in other cases where you're trying, you yield. Finally, you come disgusted and you offer that prayer. And I'm kicking him out. Please, I've done all these things. There's a certain regret. But the other one is where you just like the Avanti Brahman, where Krishna takes everything away, but you still have a reservoir of understanding. And you come to enlightenment. That yes, when I really show my mercy, I take everything away. Then his family won't even like him anymore, And then you just surrender, and you're like renounced. So both things can be there, but the safer path is to really pray and try to be renounced, and then come to the point of kama adina kadina katida. That's my take on it. I may be way off.
You have something? Yeah, there was. I'll just say one comment about that. There was in the category, the last section of the Bhagavad Gita, in the 3rd chapter, it says that there's the coverings, right? Like the lust or the material desire that's covering. It's like a covering, like what is it? The womb and the embryo. And then there's one like smoke and the fire, right? And then there's one the mirror. So in other words, there's different levels of covering, which are more difficult to remove. But I was in this commentary from one of our teachers, Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur. He says that the embryo in the womb, it's the covering's so strong that one forgets their spiritual goals. So yeah, that's the problem. That if we're associating with material energy with Maya too much, then we get covered, and then to a particular point, we just forget our spiritual goals. Whereas there may be some covering there, but we're not forgetting our goals. We're still striving, but if we let it go too far, then yeah, that's the danger. So, the Supreme Personality of Zach.
So, how can we tell if Krishna isn't fulfilling a devotee's desire or desires? How can we tell whether he's not fulfilling it because it's bad for us and it won't be beneficial for our devotional service, so we should give it up? Or, like Krishna disappearing in the rasa dance, he's not fulfilling the desire to make your desire more intense to get that thing before he fulfills it.
Never heard that one.
Well, one is that we should always check with devotees, like check with senior devotees, our gurus. We check with them, Shiksha, Diksha, Guru. We check with them and say, "What do you think about this? I have such desires, Krishna not fulfilling," and we check with them, and they'll be able to give us some clues on where we are and where we're going. But there is that in, like Borijan Prabhu's book, he has his Japa book. He writes all about Japa. The book's called Japa. So in that book, he quotes some previous teachers, their writings, and he says that, quoting them, he says that sometimes Krishna, I would really love to read though, because it's really nice, but I try to explain to some degree, but says that sometimes we are trying to be Krishna conscious, we're struggling to be Krishna conscious, and Krishna, to some degree, appears before us, not completely, but he reciprocates with us. But then he disappears, and we feel, oh well, I don't feel the mercy of Krishna, I don't feel the protection of Krishna, I don't feel, you're not feeling the rain of mercy coming down, and you're thinking, oh well, what is this, and but he's explaining there that these feelings, and then a person starts feeling ashamed. It's because I'm such a fool, it's because I'm such a rascal, it's because of this, because of my own wrongdoings that Krishna's not reciprocating with me. So in other words, they're feeling bad about themselves, they're lamenting, and still trying to connect with Krishna. So, but specifically the point is that Krishna sees that attitude, and that's the way he's reciprocating with us, by apparently not reciprocating with us. So in other words, when one gets, like the examples given, right, I think Prabhu gives in the Krishna book, the examples given that if one's a very rich man and loses all of their money, right, and then they'll always be thinking about that money. Oh, I really need to get that money back. So similarly, if one has attained to some degree the reciprocation of Krishna, and then Krishna disappears, then we'll always thinking, oh, I want to. And by those feelings, then it says that the anarthas are removed and this and that, and then so that's the way that Krishna is reciprocating with us. So I don't know if that really.
He's thinking, correct me if I'm wrong, your answer was good, but he's thinking that I want a red fur.
You're thinking that, Zach? Huh?
Wait. You're going hard now. Flames on the side. So he corrected me, but he's thinking, and I think it's kind of cute. He's thinking, I want a red fur. Krishna's not giving it to me. Now he's not giving it to me because it's bad for me, or he's not giving it to me because he wants me to really, really want a red fur. Right?
Okay, we'll put it this way. Now, if you want something that's apparently material, right? And you're saying, oh, maybe Krishna's just trying to increase my desire to have it. Now, it may just be apparently material because we have this principle at Yukta Vairagya, we engage things in Krishna's service. So, but yeah, then we consult with devotees. Hey, like, because some devotees say, oh yeah, if I win the lottery, then I'll engage all of it in Krishna's service. Yeah, I could do so much nice service, but then they just disappear, right? Hey, where'd they go? So it really, they win the lottery and then they disappear. So it's a question of actually my spiritual, he was bringing this point up. He said that sometimes they say, oh, I'll engage in business, right? So I can make a lot of money and spend it for Krishna. But then they just get so absorbed in business that they forget about Krishna. Yeah, in the future. So that's the idea, to check with devotees, to say, oh, should I really be engaged in this way or not? Because sometimes it's not actually clear. Just like it says in the Nectar of Instruction, it says one should not strive for things that are difficult, mundane things that are difficult to obtain. So in that light, you could say, oh, well, it's apparently mundane, but I'm going to use it for Krishna. But are we really? And are we striving too hard? So we check with devotees. What do you think? What do you think of that? So.
And why would Krishna want us to have? For example, Balarama Prabhu told me he was on a morning walk with Srila Prabhu. They were walking down the hills, and they walked past this big house. And Prabhu said, something will have a big house like that for Krishna. Big temple. Always walk a little further, and there's a big car and government and that. But someday we'll have a big car like that for Krishna. He's always on the driveway. And then they went a little further.
Jai Prabhu.
Yeah, Jai Prabhu. This big dog is running down this driveway, barking. Get the gate. Someday we'll have a big dog like this for Krishna. What's the Jai Prabhu? Where do you want a big dog? So why would Krishna be?
Yeah. You want to pass it to Dharmaraj, the passer? Mike, I think it's All right, the last and final comment or question, I think. I don't know if it's turned on. Yeah.
Hello.
Hello,
Hare Krishna. Can you repeat, please, the answer? How to go from halfway thinking of Krishna to always thinking of Krishna?
Halfway thinking of Krishna, always thinking of Krishna? Well, first we have to hear about Krishna and we have to read about Krishna, because the idea is if we fill our mind with Krishna, then we'll be more likely to remember. Like people fill their mind with all types of things and they remember those things because they filled their mind with those things. So in other words, we have to really put Krishna in our mind as much as possible. Listen to many lectures, listen to many kirtans, read many books, hear many talks about Krishna. And then we have a chance to think of Krishna more and more and more. And then Srila Prabhupada said, out of all the instructions of the spiritual master, the instruction to chant 16 rounds is the most important. So that will help us remember Krishna, chanting 16 rounds, and then attentively as possible. And Rupa Goswami said it's not automatic. We have to train ourselves. We have to cultivate the remembrance and train our minds, because our minds may not be so used to thinking of Krishna. So there's 9 processes of devotional service, right? Hearing, chanting, remembering, serving the deities. There's so many. That's in the Nectar of Devotion, Bhagavatam. So by following these things, then yeah, we could think of Krishna, but it'll take time to do that. So, you're welcome. All right, Jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai.